I looked into Meghan's room and I saw Benjamin's feet and Meghan's feet, and Benjamin was giving Meghan chest compressions. The voice that I'd heard was the 911 operator coming through Benjamin's phone.
Nestled just west of Houston, Katy, Texas is a suburban city that blends small-town charm with the rapid expansion of modern life. It was once a quiet prairie town, known for rice farming and cattle ranching, but has transformed over the decades into a thriving community. Katy boasts top-rated schools, bustling shopping centres and neatly manicured neighbourhoods. Despite its growth, it still holds on to the essence of its roots. Tight-knit, family-oriented, and the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked at nights. But even in the safest of places, darkness has a way of creeping in. On a seemingly ordinary early morning, as the city settled into its usual rhythm, a frantic 911 call shattered the quiet. There was a teenage boy on the other end of the line, breathless and barely coherent. The dispatcher tried to calm him down, to make sense of his gasping words. There had been an accident, or maybe something worse. What happened inside that home on a quiet Katy street would lead to a courtroom battle over science, memory, and the limits of the human mind. Twins share an extraordinary connection, one that often transcends mere genetics. From birth, they experience the world together, shaping each other's personalities, emotions, and even thoughts in ways that others may never fully understand. Some twins develop a near telepathic bond, sensing each other's pain or emotions from miles away. Others form an unspoken language, a secret world built just for the two of them. Benjamin and Meghan Elliott were those kind of twins. Those who knew them said that they seemed to know each other's movements before they happened, who could finish each other's sentences without a second thought. At 17 years old, they lived with their parents, Michael and Katy, in Katy, Texas, and attended Cypress Park High School. They were just like any other siblings, competitive but fiercely loyal, independent but always drawn back together. Benjamin was the more outgoing of the two, while Meghan was known to be more reserved. Their friend and aunt Singh recalled,
Ben would usually be the one encouraging Meghan to come out of her shell, per se. There was hardly a moment where I spent time with Ben that Meghan wasn't nearby.
Both siblings had a fantastic sense of humour, but Benjamin was the more sarcastic out of the two of them. Their older sister Elizabeth fondly said of Meghan,
Yeah, I would say she was wonderful. She really liked animals. We were on scouts together. She was quiet. She loved to draw. She was really into animation last time we checked in.
Meghan was said to live her life with compassion and empathy. She was fair, interested in justice, and she loved animals. The night of the 28th of September 2021 began like any other in the Elliott household. Benjamin and Meghan had gone to school that day, sat through their usual classes, and returned home in time for dinner. The family ate together, chatting about their day, then settled in for some television before retreating to their separate bedrooms. Another routine evening in their quiet Katy, Texas home. But somewhere around 3 a.m, the stillness of the house was broken. Michael Elliott was lying in bed, his phone screen casting a dull glow as he scrolled through YouTube, half listening as his eyelids grew heavy. Just as he began to drift off, a sound stirred him awake.
I thought I heard voices coming from inside the house that I didn't recognize.
His heartbeat quickened. He sat up, straining to listen. Then he heard it again. He got out of bed, put on his dressing gown, and left the bedroom in search of the sound.
I went out of the bedroom and started approaching the hallway where the children's room was, because I could see light coming from one of the bedrooms.
As he approached his daughter Meghan's bedroom, a slither of light spilled from beneath her door. It was unusual, he thought. She was always careful to turn her light off before bed.
I looked into Meghan's room and I saw Benjamin's feet, and Benjamin was giving Meghan chest compressions. The voice that I'd heard was the 911 operator coming through Benjamin's phone.
Michael entered his daughter's bedroom. Meghan lay sprawled across her bed, drenched in blood. And at the foot of the bed, hands pressed against her chest, was Benjamin, performing CPR with frantic urgency. Just before Michael was awoken that morning, Benjamin had called 911. He told the operator that he had woken up in his sister's bedroom and found her with a knife protruding out of her neck. Meghan appeared to be awake, but she was barely alive, Benjamin said. The 911 operator took Benjamin through CPR. While this was ongoing, Michael had appeared at the door. He frantically asked his son Benjamin what had happened. He barely looked up. His hands kept moving, following the 911 operator's instructions. His face was pale and his voice was eerily steady as he turned to his father and said, "I stabbed her." Michael staggered backwards. Panic took over.
I started to go into the room. I thought maybe I could help. And I saw Meghan's face, and she looked horrible. She was gray. It looked like she was in a lot of trouble. And I decided to go get Kathy instead, because Kathy has more experience with that, with life-saving stuff.
Michael rushed back to the master bedroom to wake up his wife, Katy, who had Red Cross training. Together they rushed back to Meghan's room, where Benjamin remained locked in his desperate rhythm, pressing, counting, breathing. Police and paramedics sped to the home on Brown Meadow Court, their sirens slicing through the early morning. As soon as Michael saw the first cruiser pull up, he flung open the front door. His voice was desperate as he begged the officers to help his daughter. They rushed inside and made their way into Meghan's bedroom. Michael and Katy were quickly ushered into the Home Office as the officers took control of the scene. Inside the bedroom, Benjamin remained hunched over his twin sister's lifeless body. Blood stained his fingers as he continued CPR. You can see this footage on our YouTube channel. Meghan was lying completely motionless on her bed with her legs sprawled out. There were 2 stab wounds to her neck, and nearby lay a bloody Air Force survival knife. Within minutes, paramedics arrived at the scene and took over CPR. They assessed Meghan and checked for signs of life, but it was already too late. Meghan was pronounced dead. Benjamin didn't react. He appeared to be in a state of panic as his hands trembled in his lap. After a moment of conferring, an officer approached Benjamin and told him that he was under arrest. He was handcuffed and led away from the family home, as Michael and Katy demanded answers. What had happened, and why had Benjamin stabbed his twin sister to death? Outside, Benjamin was escorted to a waiting patrol vehicle.
What's your name? I'm sorry? Benjamin, I'm Deputy Parker. You're going to be in my care control custody right now. So, things play out, all right? I'll treat you with respect. You do the same to me, fair enough?
The officer told him that he would treat him with respect as long as he did the same. Benjamin bluntly replied, "I don't deserve respect. I just killed my sister." The murder of Meghan sent shockwaves throughout the community, leaving everyone grappling with disbelief. The Elliott family had always appeared as just another average, run-of-the-mill household, with no one ever suspecting any dark undercurrents between Benjamin and Meghan. In a quiet neighbourhood where smiles were exchanged on the sidewalks and courteous hellos were the norm, the tragedy was both unimaginable and deeply unsettling. As the news spread, media vans began to crowd the street. Neighbours were interviewed, each offering snippets of a picture that seemed at odds with the horror of that fateful night. Eduardo Romero, a longtime resident, recalled, "They were just nice, normal people, always saying hello and goodbye, never giving anyone a reason to suspect that anything was wrong." Robert Dawson, another neighbour, described the family as reserved but genuinely kind, noting how he often saw Benjamin and Meghan walking home from school together. Yet beneath the surface of their everyday interactions lay a question that now tormented everyone. What could possibly drive a teenage boy to commit such a brutal act against his own twin sister? The community was left to wonder about the dark unspoken secrets that might have festered behind closed doors. But they weren't wondering for long. Benjamin was extremely open about what he had done and told detectives exactly what had happened. Or at least, his version of it. Following his arrest at the family home, Benjamin Elliott was transported to the police station for questioning.
And where was Meghan at?
Stabbed
Okay.
in the neck.
What side of her neck? Left or right?
She's laying like this, so like there.
Okay.
During his interview, he readily admitted to stabbing his twin sister to death, but maintained that he had been sleepwalking at the time. According to Benjamin, he had gone to bed as normal on the night of September 28, 2021, falling asleep while browsing Reddit on his phone. Sometime between 2:30 a.m. and 3 a.m, he claimed to have woken up to the sound of Meghan making what he described as a half scream. When his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realised he was standing over her bed and that a knife was lodged in her neck. Disoriented, Benjamin initially thought that he was dreaming. However, as the scene came into focus, he said he became aware of the sensation of having stabbed something, leading him to the conclusion that he had been the one to attack his sister. He stated that he removed the knife and placed it next to her before turning on the light and attempting to stem the bleeding with a pillow.
I freaked out. I put the knife down and I put a pillow on her to try and stop bleeding, and that, I called 911 from my phone.
After around 10 seconds, Benjamin ran to his own bedroom to retrieve his phone and call 911. Detectives pressed him for further details. He denied having any history of sleep disorders and stated that he hadn't consumed alcohol, narcotics or medications that could have affected his consciousness. However, he recalled that Meghan had mentioned approximately a year earlier that she had seen him sleepwalking. During the interview, Benjamin asked detectives whether they had experienced a realistic nightmare where everything felt real. He then described the experience as being like a dream, and then I stabbed her. The sleepwalking defence, also known as homicidal somnambulism, is one of the rarest and most controversial claims in criminal law. It argues that the defendant committed a crime while in a state of automatism, meaning they were unconscious and had no control over their actions. Because criminal law requires intent, if a person was truly asleep during an offence, they may be found not guilty due to a lack of culpability. These defences often argue parasomnia, which is a category of sleep disorders that involve abnormal behaviours, movements, emotions, perceptions, or dreams that occur while falling asleep, sleeping, or waking up. These episodes can be brief and often go unnoticed by the person experiencing them. This defence is difficult to prove, often requiring extensive medical evidence, sleep studies, and expert testimony. While some defendants have successfully argued that they weren't aware of their actions, others have been convicted due to scepticism from juries and judges. For example, Kenneth Parks, a 23-year-old man from Ontario, drove 14 miles to his in-laws' home, bludgeoned his mother-in-law to death and attacked his father-in-law. He then drove himself to a police station covered in blood and confessed, yet insisted he had no memory of the crime. Medical experts confirmed that Parks had a history of severe sleep disorders, and he was acquitted of murder after the court accepted that he had been sleepwalking. Another example is Scott Falater. He was accused of stabbing his wife 44 times and holding her underwater in their backyard pool. He claimed he had no memory of the attack and was sleepwalking at the time. Prosecutors argued that his actions, including changing clothing and hiding the weapon, indicated intent. The jury ultimately rejected the sleepwalking defense and he was convicted of first-degree murder. According to South Texas College of Law professor Kenneth Williams, it's a difficult defense to use successfully. He stated, "It's extremely hard to prove because it's hard to get a jury to believe he actually was sleepwalking and not aware of what he was doing. What would help him if there was no motive to kill his sister, if they got along pretty well, if there is a history of him sleepwalking, that would also help." Despite Benjamin's claims that the murder of his sister was accidental, he was charged with her first-degree murder. His bail was set at $100,000. In the wake of the arrest, the Elliott family released a statement through their attorney which read, "We're still gathering all of the facts and details of this tragedy. There's no question that Benjamin loved his sister very much. They were extremely close and the best of friends. The family is asking for privacy as they process this heartbreaking event." The next morning, Benjamin appeared in court dressed in an orange jumpsuit with handcuffs around his wrists. He had been appointed a defence attorney, Carrie Lynn Higginbotham, who requested a lower bond, but the judge refused. In the days that followed, the Elliott family worked to have Benjamin transferred out of Harris County Jail and into a psychiatric facility. Despite the horrific nature of the crime, they stood by him, insisting that what had happened was not intentional. Then just days later, Benjamin was released on bond. To the shock of many, he was allowed to return to the very home where he had stabbed his sister to death. By February of 2025, jury selection for the highly anticipated murder trial had begun. The case had drawn widespread media attention, with legal analysts debating whether the sleepwalking defence would hold up in court. Although rare, cases of homicidal sleepwalking had been documented before, and defendants had even been acquitted. But would the jury believe Benjamin? During opening statements, defence attorney Wes Rucker immediately laid the foundation for their argument. His position was clear. Benjamin had been in an unconscious state when he killed his sister Meghan. Addressing the jury, Rucker posed a question that would linger throughout the trial. How could a kid who cherishes his sister, who loves her, protects her, how could someone commit a crime that heinous without a reasonable explanation? The prosecution, however, painted a starkly different picture. Prosecutor Meghan Long wasted no time in dismantling the sleepwalking theory, asserting that the evidence showed Benjamin had been fully awake when he attacked his sister. Cell phone data, she argued, was a critical piece of evidence. According to the forensic analysis, Benjamin's phone had been active before and after the murder. It had registered movement, logging steps into Meghan's bedroom. Approximately 20 minutes before the 911 call, the phone had been locked, suggesting that Benjamin had been using it before carrying out the attack. Long also pointed to his actions immediately after the stabbing. He turned off his school alarm before dialing 911, an indication, she argued, that he was conscious and aware of what he was doing. Another troubling detail emerged during the trial, the manner in which Meghan had been stabbed. Prosecutors contended that Benjamin had used a pillow to muffle her screams. If the attack had been sudden and unplanned, why hadn't their parents woken up until Benjamin was already on the phone with 911? Then there was the nature of the wound itself. Meghan had been stabbed in the jugular vein, a wound that, according to forensic experts, should have resulted in a significant amount of blood spray. And yet the room was curiously clean. Prosecutor Maroon Kutani said to the jury,
On September 28th of 2021, Meghan Elliott goes to bed in her home where she lives with her two parents and her twin brother, Benjamin Elliott. They're both 17 at the time. Meghan lives on the side of the house with Benjamin in their own rooms, separated by a hallway. Meghan Elliott falls asleep on September 28th of 2021. Her last memory is being ripped out of her sleep, her brother standing over her, a knife plunged in her neck, and a pillow over her face. Like Meghan, we don't know what motivated Benjamin Elliott to stab his own twin sister in the neck. But what we do know is that he calls 911 at 4:41. Hello? Hello? My name is Benjamin Elliott. I just killed my sister. Hello? Dispatch. Do you need medical? What's happening? Is she awake? Is she breathing? I just killed my sister. I stabbed her with a knife.
The trial took an emotional turn as Michael Elliott, father of Benjamin and Meghan, took the stand. Under questioning, Michael revealed that the knife used to kill his daughter was one of his own survival knives. It wasn't just any weapon. It was something Benjamin had access to, something he was familiar with. Michael admitted he was enamoured with them. At one point, the prosecutor handed him an autopsy photograph of Meghan, asking him to confirm her identity. A heavy silence filled the room as he looked at the image of his daughter, frozen in time. He identified her with a quiet nod. Michael also recalled the moment the police took his son away from their home, an image that was now burned into his memory.
When Benjamin was being let out, did you ask him anything about what had happened?
Yes, I asked. They brought him past me as I was standing at that point at the front door with several police officers. And I asked Benjamin what happened.
What did he say?
He said it was a dream. And
when you interacted with the Harris County Sheriff's Office, how'd that go?
It did not go well. I wanted them to help, and I did not see them helping.
Yet despite everything, he insisted there had been no indication, no warning signs that his son was capable of such violence. In the days and weeks leading up to the tragedy, Benjamin had been his usual self, goofy, good-natured, affectionate towards his twin sister. The case wasn't a whodunit, so there was very little testimony regarding the physical murder. Instead, the crux of the case hinged on whether or not the jury believed that Benjamin was asleep when he plunged the knife into Meghan's neck. From the start, prosecutors made it clear that they intended to dismantle the sleepwalking defence. Their key piece of evidence was Benjamin's cell phone activity. Records showed that he had been actively using his phone shortly before the murder. Investigators determined that he had been scrolling, texting, and engaging with content, an obvious indication, they argued, that he had been fully awake.
See, what we do know is that the defendant is on his cell phone watching YouTube videos and searching and browsing Reddit throughout the night. What we do know is that at 4 o'clock, we start seeing him lock and unlock the device more often. What we do know is that at 4:06, he unplugs the device. What we do know is that at 4:08, he takes about 8 steps for 18 feet. And then at 4:17, the device is locked. You're going to want to write 417 down. At 417, the device is locked, and that device is not unlocked again until 441 when he calls 911.
Then there was the matter of time. Blood evidence suggested that Meghan had been stabbed sometime before Benjamin finally called 911. The blood beneath her body had already started to coagulate, meaning her injuries hadn't been inflicted in a sudden unconscious episode followed by an immediate plea for help. When it was his turn to address the jury, defence attorney Wes Rucker acknowledged what he called the elephant in the room.
Now, you're going to hear from different experts. So let's get kind of the elephant in the room out of the way. Okay? Parasomnia. Is this just some made-up baloney as a really creative defense? The answer is absolutely not. And the state, which you're going to see from the evidence, the state's going to agree to that. You heard no testimony during their case in chief about this, but there's going to be no question parasomnias are real and they are frightening.
Rucker argued that Benjamin suffered from parasomnia, a sleep disorder that can cause individuals to engage in complex behaviours, sometimes violent ones, while in an unconscious state. He explained that parasomnia episodes can occur shortly after falling asleep, which meant that Benjamin's cell phone usage before the attack didn't necessarily prove that he was awake at the time of the stabbing. He said to the jury, "Parasomnia can result in sudden violent events where there's a lack of motive and no attempt to cover it up. And this is not a ruse. This is not some defence strategy to get Ben off. This is a tragic, tragic set of circumstances." His words hung in the air. Would the jury see Benjamin as a cold-blooded killer, or as a boy trapped in a nightmare he could never wake up from? To bolster their claim that Benjamin had been sleepwalking during this stabbing, the defence called Dr. Wendy Elliott, a clinical psychologist who had evaluated him before the trial. She took the stand and addressed the courtroom. At the time of my interview, he was reporting some current mental health issues, but he reported no mental health issues that were evidence at the time of the alleged attack. Her assessment was a critical moment in the case. If Benjamin had no documented history of severe mental illness, was it possible that the crime had truly been committed in an unconscious state? There had been questions raised about whether Benjamin had sleptwalked before the stabbing. His older sister, Elizabeth, testified via Zoom from Georgia. She recalled a moment from years earlier when she witnessed what could have been a sleepwalking episode. She said that her brother appeared in a bedroom doorway and was completely unresponsive to her calling his name. She testified, "And I just touched his shoulder and his eyes were barely open, and then we told him to go back to bed." Her testimony raised an important question. Had Benjamin exhibited signs of parasomnia before, only for it to go unnoticed? Elizabeth also painted a picture of Benjamin and Meghan's relationship, one that hardly seemed volatile. She described them as the best of friends, always together. Any disagreements they had were trivial, mostly sparked by video games, but nothing serious.
Did you observe how Ben would act as a protector to your sister whenever she had issues?
For sure.
Okay, let's start. Let me start here. What did Meghan have? Was she autistic?
Yeah.
Okay, tell the jury a little bit about that.
She was diagnosed when we were younger. It was always something we all kind of knew, grew up with. She was really quiet. She had a hard time. She was still loving, but she had a really hard time making friends, especially when she got older, because there's not a lot of room for that kind of softness, I think, in public.
All right, slow down just a little. So she would have a hard time making friends.
Yeah.
Ma'am, this is Judge Lacayo in the 182nd. You're going to have to slow down, okay? Just please slow down.
She said that he was always protective of Meghan. The defence also called Anand Singh, a friend of Benjamin's who testified about his history of sleepwalking.
Anand, there was an incident that happened shortly after this picture was taken, is that correct?
The morning after, yes.
So let me back up a little bit. When, obviously, you know why we're here and why Ben is here, right?
Of course.
When you were given information that Ben was sleepwalking, what was your reaction?
I was shocked to hear the news at first, and then I immediately thought of the incident that you mentioned at that slumber party in April of 2016. So Benjamin Elliott, during our sleepovers, would sleep on the couch and let his sister sleep on a mattress on the floor next to my sister.
Okay, who determined who slept where?
Benjamin Elliott would usually be the first to volunteer himself for a couch, and it was just kind of tradition from then on out.
So he would let his sister take the mattress.
That is correct. And then we had a bunch of donuts for breakfast set on the stovetop. And when I woke up, was heading out of the room, Benjamin Elliott was already holding one in his hands. He was lying on the couch, his head on the armrest, facing my way, and he was eating a donut.
Okay. What was his demeanor like when you saw him at first?
Rather calm. He was just eating his donut.
Okay. What did you say to him?
Meghan, Elliott, and Elizabeth saying we're already awake at the time, so I simply wish everybody good morning.
Okay. And did that seem to startle or alert Mr. Elliott?
A little bit. He mostly looked baffled at the fact that he was holding a donut in his hand, and that it was already partially eaten by him.
And what did Ben say about the donut?
Well, after I said good morning, and he noticed the donut was in his hand, he said he had the weirdest dream. He was dreaming about eating a donut, and that he just woke up, and the donut was in his hands, and he was already eating it.
The final and most crucial witness for the defence was Gerald Simmons, a leading expert on sleep disorders. His testimony aimed to establish that Benjamin's actions could have been the result of parasomnia. He explained the nature of parasomnia, stating, "You're not consciously awake while you're sleepwalking, but there can be pockets of memory." In other words, Benjamin's recollections of the event, the sensation of stabbing something, the act of pulling out the knife, did not necessarily mean that he had been awake at the time. Dr. Simmons had also conducted a sleep study on Benjamin, revealing that he scored high on a sleepiness scale and often struggled with waking up. But what caused that particular night to spiral into tragedy? Simmons suggested that Benjamin's familiarity with knives may have triggered an automatic response while in a sleepwalking state. He theorised that a perfect storm of sleep deprivation, stress and the proximity of the weapon could have led to the fatal stabbing. Was it an unconscious act of violence, or a calculated murder disguised as sleep? After both sides rested their cases, it was time for closing arguments. The prosecution was first, with Dr. Meghan Long addressing the jury, stating, "While I didn't give you a motive, I did give you premeditation. It's not a coincidence that the knife he got the night before is the same knife he used to kill his sister." In response, defence attorney Carrie Lynn Higginbotham countered, "Mr. Rucker and I have disproven what they have tried to sell you, their narrative. We don't have a burden. We don't have to prove anything, but who's putting forth the proof? It's not them." Defence attorney Wes Rucker then appealed to the jury's emotions, stating, "He's going to live the rest of his life with the pain and regret and remorse that at his hands his sister is no longer here. The girl that he would wash windows with, ride the bus with, laugh with, giggle with, the one he watched over, the one he loved. He did it. He knows it, but he did not intentionally, knowingly commit this act." The jury deliberated for just 5 hours before reaching their decision. They found Benjamin Elliott guilty of the murder of his sister, rejecting his sleepwalking defence. The sentencing phase followed the next morning. The prosecution sought at least 40 years while the defence asked for just 5. In Texas, murder carries a punishment of 5 to 99 years in prison. During this phase, Dr. Gerald Simmons, the neurologist who had testified for the defence, expressed his disappointment in the verdict. He stated, "I think the jury got it wrong. It's totally possible. If it wasn't possible, I would not have taken this position. But there are cases. They are rare, but they can occur." There was also testimony about Meghan Elliott, a young woman deeply interested in justice. The family said that she would have been stunned by the verdict.
She would be heartbroken, sad, angry at the fact that we are sitting here today in a sentencing hearing. She would have been angry to hear prosecution say that no one was here to speak for Meghan, and that in some way it was their job to do that. She would be furious. That is not the Meghan I know.
Her parents said she would have wanted compassion for her brother. Ultimately, Judge Danilo Lacayo sentenced Benjamin to 15 years in prison, citing the jury's request for leniency. He also noted Benjamin's lack of criminal history and the fact he had no issues while on bond. Under Texas law, however, Benjamin would be eligible for parole in just 7.5 years. As Benjamin was led out of the courtroom to begin his sentence, his attorneys expressed relief at the relatively lenient sentence. Rucker stated, "We are very happy with the sentence. We think it reflects what the judge thought was a weakness in the state's case. We are pleased." But outside the courtroom, the case continued to spark debate. To some, Benjamin was a tragic figure, a young man haunted by an unimaginable accident. To others, he was a murderer, and his conviction was a necessary step towards justice for Meghan. Even now, questions remain. Did Benjamin truly stab his sister in his sleep? Or did he consciously take the life of the person he was closest to? In the end, only Benjamin Elliott knows for sure. Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to say a massive thank you to my newest supporter up on Patreon, Siobhan. If you'd like to join Morbidology up on Patreon, the link is in the show notes, and you can join for as little as $1 a month. There's absolutely no obligations. You can cancel your subscription at any time, and I promise I'll still love you. In exchange for your support up on there, I upload ad-free and early release episodes behind the scenes, and I also send out a handwritten thank you card along with some cool Patreon exclusive merch. There's also a handful of bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus that aren't on the regular podcast platforms. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read some true crime articles. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.